Creating a great retirement plan generally doesn't mean deciding which child you want to move in with. Hey, welcome to the Ease into Retirement podcast, number 34. I'm Tom Mosley. I'm your host. I promise you each week, if you'll give me up to 15 minutes, I will do my very best to build your financial knowledge. Now, as you will know, if you follow the podcast, this is episode 5 of 7, where we're talking about the potholes of retirement, things that can just really throw your retirement out of line, like a pothole in your car can throw your front end out of a line, and then you don't know it for a while. You don't realize it immediately sometimes, unless it pops the tire, but you go along and then you realize that your front end, your tires are wearing the wrong way, and you say, hey, I've gotten off track here. So we're talking about potholes of retirement. Today we're going to talk about number 9 and number 10, and it's the 5th of a series of a 7-part episode. This is the 5th episode, number 34 overall. Let's talk about pothole number 9. Believe it or not, work may be a part of your retirement. That's pothole number 9. Work may be a part of your retirement. And a lot of people say, you know, I've worked so hard all my life. When I get to the point of retirement, I never want to work another day in my life. And some people come in and say, hey, I'd sort of like to keep work, keep active, keep doing some things. I have very dear clients to me, and sometimes they work at Lowe's. And they work 20 hours a week or 25 hours a week, or they work during the middle of the day. Or I have some clients who work at things like the Nixon Library as a docent, and they don't need the money. They can only do so much lawn work, is what they told me when I've talked to them. So work may be a part of what your retirement looks like. And that may be a pothole to you, because you may say, well, I really never really planned on it. You know, often retirees find themselves unemployed, and I guess there would be 3 major reasons. And the first one would be one we don't ever want to get into that point if we don't have to, and that's just of necessity. A lot of people get to a point where either they get laid off earlier than they plan to, or their health won't maintain a full 40, 48-hour-a-week job that they've had for years, and a lot of times this happens with COVID and change of ownership of companies and things like that, or you get a new boss and you say, the stress of this job is going to end my retirement and my life, so I might as well go ahead and retire. And so there's a necessity, because you chop off those working years and you don't have quite enough money saved, and you're not maybe quite close enough to Social Security, or you're not close enough to Medicare. You're not 65 yet. So there might be a lot of reasons that you find it necessary to go get a job and to work a job. So number 1, you can delay turning on Social Security, or you can have medical coverage, which will cost you extremely much if you're in your 60s, right up until 65 when you do go on Medicare. Or you say, well, I don't want to turn on my Social Security yet. I want to make sure I get to my full retirement age, which is between 66 and 67. So there may be a lot of reasons you find work necessary, and it all is, you know, you just retired early or got retired early or felt like you needed to retire early, and you don't have quite enough assets there to pay the medical bills, or to retire and start drawing down on your IRAs and your 401ks. So necessity is one of the reasons that you might find work in your future. Number 2, you might choose to work by choice. Now, believe it or not, there are a lot of weird creatures out there. Just joking if you're one of these weird creatures. But there are a lot of people who come in and say, I don't know what I would do with all my time if I didn't have a job. And I've actually had some people in retirement. Remember, I've been doing this 27 years. I've had some people in retirement that they chose to go back to work. Now, I've got the Boeing engineers who were employed for so long, had their 401k, their pension at that time, and they retired, but they went back to work on a contract basis, and they worked for 2 months on a 10-week or a 8-week or a 10-week contract, and then they're off for 2 months, and they get paid as a 1099. So they choose to go back to work, or they choose to get a part-time job like the guy at Lowe's or the docent at a library or whatever. They choose to do it because, number 3, they don't want to be bored. A lot of people actually get to retirement and find themselves bored. Now, be careful if you haven't retired yet, because you might be saying, look, I'm going to work as long as it's necessary. I don't want to work by choice, and I definitely don't want to work because I'm bored. Well, be careful, because you ain't been there yet, and you don't know how you're really going to react and how you're really going to feel when you do get to retirement. So you may find work as a part of your future. Now, let me say just a little bit more about that third point about why you might be working in retirement. If you're bored, I want you to consider some other things too, if it's not a necessity and you don't need the assets that you're going to be bringing in.
Hey folks, thank you for listening to today's episode of the Ease into Retirement podcast with Tom Mosley. Just a quick reminder that if anything you've heard so far today has hit home for you, maybe it's something you're dealing with, maybe it's just something you want to learn a little bit more about, there will be a complimentary downloadable giveaway on Tom's website, specifically prepared for this week's episode, that you should check out. Just go to easepodcast.com. That's EASE podcast.com. Click the button with the title of this week's episode and get your copy today. Now I'll throw it back to Tom.
Number 1, consider volunteering. Number 2, consider exercising and joining an exercise group or walking or bicycling. And I'm only drawing on the resources of people that are our clients who found a lot of enjoyment in retirement doing some of these things. Go learn a new skill. Take a course at a school or a community center where they teach you a new skill. Or some people I've known have even started learning a new language or developing a new hobby. Crocheting, knitting, or golfing. If you want to really frustrate yourself in retirement, take up golfing and try to learn how to hit that little ball straight. I mean, there's so many things you need to do. But just realize if you do have to go back to work, let me show you some of the trends. This comes from the Center for Retirement Research. The Center for Retirement Research says that in 1985, 10% of the people worked in retirement. In 2019, 2 years ago, the last time for statistics, Bloomberg says 20% plus of the people work in retirement, 1 out of 5. So don't feel like you're an unusual bird if necessity or choice or boredom drives you back to the workforce. But it could be a pothole you don't recognize and you don't understand if you're not planning on it or you're not warned about it. If you've been listening for the last 7 minutes and a half, just consider yourself warned. Work may be a part of your retirement. Pothole number 10, and we started off with this one. You might, as bad as you say you'll never do this, you might have to move in with one of your children. You might have to move in with one of your children. And there's some reasons for that too. It could be an economic necessity. Most of you, although I have clients in literally tens of states, and the last time I checked, I had clients in 32 states. They all started here in California, most of them, and they migrated other places, and they just decided to stay with us, which is great because we can still do that. But you might find, if you're living in Southern California particularly, that living with your children becomes an economic necessity. Hey, it's happened in other countries across the world, and we're seeing it happen more and more here in the United States. Now, there's 2 major reasons that you might live with your kids by necessity. Number 1 would be economic necessity. It's just cheaper. And you may look at your children and say they can never afford to buy a home. I don't know how much longer I have here on the earth, and they're going to inherit my home. Why don't I just move in and I'll stay in my part of the house for my living time, and they'll move in and use the other part of the house. It might work out great. The other issue that I've seen where you might find yourself living with your children is declining health. You just are not in really good health. And thank God for this. The times that I've seen this in my own working with financial planning for retirement for 27 years is the children sometimes come and they say, Tom, I want mom, or Tom, we just feel like it'll be best if dad lives with us, because they want to bring you in so they can watch you and take care of you. And you say, well, why can't they take care of me in my own house? Now let me give you some reasons. If you're already retired and you're reluctant to move in with the kids and they're pressuring you a little bit because of health issues. Number one, they want to take care of you and make sure you're okay. Number two, if something happens to you that's traumatic or emergency, they want to be right there for you. And they may live, you say, well, they only live 20 miles away. That could be an hour away in Southern California. And a lot of times I've seen children say, I just want mom and dad to live closer. And number three, they actually enjoy being with you. So if any of those issues, economic situations or health situations, dictate that maybe it's just best if you live together, then with your adult children, that might be a good reason. You say, I never want to do that. I never want to ever be in that situation. Well, that's why we tell you, work as long as you can, all things being equal. Make as much as you can, because most of the time in the last years of your employment, you're making more money than you did when you were 20 years old. And number three, save as much as you can so that it never becomes an economic necessity. But if it becomes an issue of declining health and your children want to just take really good care of you, consider the fact that you may move in. And one other thing I would say on that, or maybe two other things. One other thing I would say is a lot of times I've seen that happen. As long as there's two of you, you're married, there's two of you, and you can take care of each other, or there's one to report if one has a major accident, and that's pretty easy. But when there's the loss of a spouse and you're living alone, it becomes even more critical that health-wise, if you're in declining health, that somebody's there to watch over you, or if economic situations dictate that you then live or move in with a child. Please be accepting of that. It's becoming more and more prevalent. Now, here's one way to stop it, and you're not going to like me, some of you, for saying this. Some of you need to realize that you, in many cases, are the goose of your family that's laying or has already laid the golden eggs. Now, by that I mean, if you have already retired and you've got your nest egg, what I have seen, and I'll give you some stats here, and these stats come from TD Ameritrade from a 2017 survey. They found that the average boomer family, get a load of this, sit down, is giving $11,011 a year to their children. $11,011 a year to their children. Now, if you've got a big enough nest egg that you can help your children, then that's great. That's super. That's something that you do by choice. But don't do it by pressure. Remember, you're the goose that's laid the golden egg. And if your children are needy this year and needy next year and needy the next year and needy the next year, and you continue to spend from your nest egg, you could get to the point where you're all living together because none of you have any money. Be the goose that has laid and still has the golden egg so that you can help when there's a necessity. And sometimes the best thing you can do for your children, this is going to be harsh and hard, some of you might think, is tell them no, because you've got to take care of them yourself. If they don't have the means to take care of themselves and you give them all of your means and you spend down to the point where you then have to move in with them and live with one of your kids, then none of you have any money, none of you have any assets, and you're all living in a situation that's not desirable. So you may need to learn to say no to your kids so that you don't eventually have to live with the kids who are always needy of more and more money. If they are always needing more and more money to run their own household, when you move in with them, how are they going to have enough money to take care of you as well as their own household? Hey, Pothole potholes of retirement. Number 9, work may be a part of your retirement. Number 10, you might have to move into your kids. Now remember, as I say on these podcasts every week, this is not specific tax, legal, investment, or gardening advice to you. This is general information. Before you would go and make any kind of major decisions, you need to consult with your financial advisor, us, if you work with us. And if you don't work with anybody and you need somebody, give us a call. Our number is 714-421-4288. Let us know if you have any issues or have any questions. If you like this podcast, subscribe to it so you'll get notification of it every single week. If you liked it, share it with a friend. If you didn't like it, go tell a tree somewhere, but please don't tell anybody else. Seriously, let us know. So until next time, this is the Ease into Retirement podcast. I'm Tom Mosley, your host, and if you'll give me 15 minutes and 11 seconds right now, I'll do my best every week to build your financial knowledge.
Investment advisory services offered only by duly registered individuals through AE Wealth Management, LLC. AE Wealth Management and Mosley Insurance and Financial Services are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Mosley Insurance and Financial Services is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Mosley Insurance and Financial Services. Ed Slott's IRA Advisor Group is a paid membership educational organization comprised of professionals of varying credentials. Membership in this organization does not imply a set level of skill or training. The logo and/or service mark is the property of their respective owners, and no endorsement of Tom Mosley is stated or implied.
A Roth conversion is a taxable event and may have several tax-related consequences. Be sure to consult with a qualified tax advisor before making any decisions regarding your IRA.